creative friends. I'm Pamela Poole and I am working today to conquer a project that I'm not sure how to handle again. I've been using this summer to try new things, and in this case I like to purchase some decorative candles sometimes as gifts or for myself. The most safe ones that I can find, and hopefully with just essential oils in them. But I tend to buy the ones that have the pretty lids, as this one does. But then that leaves me sometimes with lids like this or this that I don't really know. They're pretty and I'd like to do something with them, but what? And then I have a lid like this, and I thought, well, maybe I could put some shells down at the bottom, cover that, and paint waves and a seascape scene in the background. Okay, well, let's say that's something I could do. How do I do that? I brainstormed, okay, how about some pour paint? Well, that's going to get pretty messy. If you've done any paint pouring, you know that it's going to make a mess around the edges. And I would like to save the whole jar to maybe use for cosmetics or some sort of storage, a gift to friends. I could maybe glue some colored sand or more of the shells or something on the side. In other words, I want to recycle a candle container for another use. And I need the edges to be like this. I need them to be clean. So I need to contain everything that I'm going to design on the top. Well, acrylic paint, I could do that, but I would still need to use a gesso or something on the surface. So I finally decided, especially this summer after using watercolor markers and watercolor paint, that I would like to try watercolors on the top to get that watery effect. And I want to pull out some paints I rarely use. I bought them just to see if I could embellish some Christmas cards or something. And I would like to use these shimmery colors. I can see that looking really pretty on this with some greens and teal colors with some shimmer. So how am I going to go about that? Well, I remembered that there is a watercolor paper ground. I think different people make these, different companies. This one is Daniel Smith, and I really like their watercolor paints. So I thought I would go ahead and get a product that I was already familiar with. And what I did was last night I took this lid and this lid and this lid. This one was easy. I just put one coat on there because I didn't need to take the varnish off. So this one is ready to go. I have a layer of watercolor ground on it. This one, I think I used 2 layers on it. It wasn't varnished at all. I don't think it had any coating on the top. So it's probably ready with just one coat of the watercolor ground. This one, however, it has a kind of a varnish color on it, and it was shiny. So I knew, in fact, I can still see a little shine under this watercolor ground that I've got on the top. So I took a piece of sanding paper. I sanded it very lightly so that I wouldn't take the color off. And then I put some watercolor ground on there. To be honest, I'm not sure it's going to work because I'm not sure if you can see it in the picture, but there are some places that are showing up shiny underneath this ground. And I don't know if the watercolor will stick to that. So we're just going to experiment today. I don't know where this is going. It's another one of those off-the-cuff things that I'm coming up with. And we'll see what happens as I move forward. I did try to do my own version of this just on a scrap piece of watercolor paper to see if I could make the shapes and that sort of thing. So I may do this pattern on here just to see if this is going to work. So let's get started. I'm going to use a watercolor brush. I think I'm going to have to wait on this part. I believe I'm going to have to wait on those until I get some of these paints used up. Now, I did pour some of these out to see if I could get the consistency, and in fact, one was kind of dried up and I wasn't able to use it, so I'm glad we didn't waste time with that one. But I do have some that I poured out that have dried, and I just want to see if I re-wet these, what can I do on this watercolor ground, on this wood. I don't really like it that it's got this white area. We'll see what happens. If you want to explore this with me, we will work on it together. And I'm sure you would be able to tell me, if you've done this before, you could probably tell me in the comments where I went wrong and what I should have done. This has already got 3 coats on it of the ground. So I'm not sure why it's not sticking all the way to the edge. And I don't know, I was hoping the wood grain was going to show through. Apparently when I sanded, I took some of the color off. And I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that area. But let's just think about this particular pattern here. I like this particular shape right here. I have some of these growing in my yard, so I'm going to just come up through here. I'm going to make this little look here. Now actually, these are just regular watercolor. I should have shown you some of this. These are just regular Daniel Smith watercolors. And there's nothing added to them. This one really sort of went off the rails with the shape. I didn't intend for it to go all the way up. So I'm not sure how much that one's going to be a success. Maybe if I don't make it so wet. I think it is acting something like watercolor paper. This watercolor ground product. I think it is behaving somewhat like paper, except for this area right here, I'm not sure what I did. It could have been just user problems. Could have been me. Let's see, the top of this kind of goes like that. And then we would come in with more of these patterns on the side. They curl up like almost like they're waving. Hey! All right, let's come over here. That one's not really looking like the others, is it? User problems again. Operator. All right, I don't know if you can see a trend here, but in this particular piece that I put the 3 layers of the ground on and that I sanded, it's kind of got a mind of its own for sure. And I don't really know if I can do anything to save it, to keep it into a form like the plant, or if it's just going to be its own variation of this plant. Now on this piece of wood, this lid, I did use some tape all around the edge to keep from getting anything on it, because I'd like a clean edge, remember, like I do with this one. And I'm not really sure, I think that's going to stay clean, but I'm not really sure how this is going to work on the top at all. I'm not enjoying it very much, and I'm concerned at this point. But let's see what happens if I put more color on. It's still a better way to try this project on the top, unless I was using a gesso and acrylic that was watered down to get watercolor effects. I'm not really sure how else I could have done this. And I want to experiment with something else here. Can I move this? You know, on watercolor paper, I would be able to dab that out. Interesting. Usually I'm telling you with watercolor, you're the boss. Maybe that's the case here, but the boss is going to have to say stop at this edge. And let's see what happens. At this point, I'm dropping in some other colors to get a different effect. And I can't really work behind it, behind the plant, because everything I do is going to run into this wet area. So let's put this one aside and work on another one. Remember that I told you I'm going to put some shells on this one? I really couldn't sand it enough to get this all the way out. So I'm going to have to work around it. I'd like a very light sky, just a suggestion, and I want the wood grain to show through. So far, so good. This has been primed with only one coat of the Daniel Smith product. Right in this area, I'm going to start getting into water. So I'm going to make this free, but have a little more intense color here. I didn't put the tape around the edge of this one because I only had one coat of the paper, the watercolor ground paper on it. I felt like I could have enough control that it wouldn't look strange. All right, I think that I will leave this plain to suggest sand, and then this, when I decide to glue these down, I'll have these angel wings and other seashells here at the bottom. And I'm going to throw some gold and silver in there in a few minutes. I think I'm going to like that. All right. I'm working on the smaller lid that I'm going to put the seashells on. And I'm working in the, this is called sterling silver, but it's actually a pearly white color. And I have gone ahead and completed like a moon scene with shimmery sky. I used a little bit of white gouache, which is what you usually do with watercolor. I'm still working in just traditional watercolor ways, except for the ground being in the background. And I just put some of that shimmer over that gouache. As long as it was dry and I sort of leave it alone, it should be fine. And then I'm going to use some of this here in the surf. What I call the surf, it's just a line. Let's put a little bit through the water. This is just to suggest a scene. Obviously, it's not really going to be as if I painted it on a canvas. Excuse me. Ragweed is blooming, and sometimes it takes my voice at this time of year. Okay, I think that when this is dry, you can sort of see the shimmer. I think after I put these back on, well, I might put some more of the shimmer down through here. But when I start putting these shells on that cover up the brand name for this used up candle, it smelled very good. I think this one was sunflowers or something like that. If I use this, and I'll arrange the pattern later, I think that would be pretty. This candle holder that it came in actually has some jewelry that I made with some beach glass. So I'm already storing some things in it. And if I wanted to give it as a gift so that maybe my best friend could use it to store something, cosmetics or something, there would be a gift. I can't really turn it too much on the side or the shells will move away, but it is white. And I will probably do arrangements of shells up and down on the side, and I think that will be a beautiful gift container. One thing I do want to remind you of, though, is this is watercolor and not acrylic, and so I will have to lightly spray a varnish over the top to keep anything from happening to it. Normal wear and tear probably wouldn't be a big deal, but dropping water on it, that would be a big deal. So there's number one. We do have that finished. This was just the cork or wood, whatever this top is, with one coat of the Daniel Smith watercolor ground on it and a little bit of paint. All right, let's get back to some of these more intense ones that I was working with. This one, as you can see, is coming along. I did a little bit of this sterling silver in the middle. I don't think it's going to do very much, and I want more pop than that. So let's see what happens if I put some of this gold in there. Yeah, I do think I'm going to like the gold better. And I may put several versions of this gold in here. It's got a beautiful shimmer. And then I'll probably, let's see, how about at the tip of each of these, I drop in a little bit of gold. So that tells you kind of how this can, where this can go. I'm going to do more with the lilies. I'm not sure yet if I'll make those white or pink or what I'm going to do with that. But we'll let these little gold tips dry and the center dry while we work on the one that I believe is going to give me the most trouble and the one that I most wanted to find out if I could fix it. All right. And I'm looking for it. Oh, here we go. I put it back on its candle. It has a pretty candle that it goes on the top of. That's why I'm using this color scheme. It will be pretty. Here's what we've turned out to have at the end of everything. This has gotten dry. Remember, I had some trouble over here on this edge. And I wasn't really able to remedy that except to just smooth it out with some watercolor and dry the edge. But I could probably paint over it and get something. What will I do with the background? I've got some metallic options here. I've got some yellow. The candle itself is this pale blue. So I don't know. I think what I'll do is go with some more of this silver. Let's see what happens with the sterling silver if I put it right here. It's got a very pretty shimmer. We're using a watercolor paper ground, but this seems to be flowing in pretty well, doesn't it? Let's see what happens if I continue it over here. I have removed the tape from the edges of this. All right, while I fill that in all the way around, we'll see what happens and then we'll come back and work on this part. While the outside of this is drying, I wanted to see what might happen if I put some water on this plant, this tropical leaf here, and then led it by holding it and by pulling on it with a wet brush, led it towards the front with, or the top, I guess it would be if it was laying down. What would happen if I put the metallics in there? And remember, we're just playing. We don't know what's going to happen with this. So I'm going to work with this and we'll see what happens when it dries. So the final question as we come to the end of this video, was this a success? Well, I didn't even know what I was doing when I started. So I would say it's a success that I learned a lot of things about how to use the watercolor ground and what would happen with the gold paint that I had. I hadn't used it on anything like this, just on a card or two, maybe a little embellishment. I really am pleased with this one, and I think I'm going to choose some shells and start to finish this project to be able to give it away soon. And I also, with this one, I really like, I didn't have any idea where I was going with this, but I really like how it turned out. I may go in and put one more coat of the gold on there. Both of these I will end up spraying with a clear acrylic so that if anyone should happen to drop some water on it, the paint won't be messed up. But overall, that is a much better look for these containers than I had. I wouldn't have to do it as an upcycle project, because I could just do the candle top as soon as I buy it. But I don't use them very fast. They're mostly like an autumn item or an emergency item for us for if the power is out. I think they would be pretty if you're brainstorming and you have some of these, like this one that I showed you that I didn't coat for the video with the watercolor thing. I am going to do something with that. The container for it is a pretty navy blue, kind of a clear that you can see through. I think I'm going to do something like some of these feathers to cover the brand name. So I may do a little bit more collage on that, similar to what I did with the seashell. This would be pretty if anybody's thinking of what you would put on the side of a container. If you wanted to embellish it, this would be pretty. And if you're wondering what I did with the sort of mandala looking lid, it just wasn't doing well with a brush to get into these tiny spots that were stamped into this wood. So I started using colored pencils. If you remember, I did a colored pencil demo a few weeks ago, learning to use these pencils, and I found a new use for them. So I'm learning a lot this summer. And whenever I do finish, I will probably embellish with some of this gold that I have here, or some of the silvery purple shimmer that I have on this one. I don't know yet. We'll see whenever I finish up. In the meantime, though, I hope this inspires you to think about upcycling, to think about a gift idea, perhaps for friends, or just to have something pretty around your house, something that makes you happy, makes you smile. That's what we're going for, right? So for me, this was a success, and I will definitely be looking into what I can do with the rest of the tops to my candles. I try to buy some that are non-toxic, so be careful when you're buying candles. But if nothing else, you could put an electric or little battery operated tea light into these, and they would function just the same. Just, you may have to put some essential oil in it for a scent or something like that. All right, go brainstorm what you're going to do with these and have a beautiful, creative day. Bye-bye.